The Egyptian Heaven and Hell by E. A. Wallis Budge. Volume 3 is the contents of the books of the other world described and compared. Chapter 7 is the third division of the Tuat. Part 1 is the kingdom of Kunte Yiminte Yasir according to the book Yim Tuat. And I don't know if I've gotten 2 videos back on this series, I've got any views, but I've, tried to expound on various things as I go along and present this. So if you like any of them, you might want to see the rest. The boat Yafu Ra, the sun entity, of Yafu Ra, leaving the abode of the souls of the Tuat, now enters that of Ba-Eu, the mental souls. Shatayu are the secret souls. And we find that a change has taken place as regards to the crew. The demoness of the hour is Dunt Ba-Eu and has taken charge of the boat. A hawk-headed entity acts as a steersman, and the number of the entities is reduced to 4. The region now entered by Yafu Ra is called Nut Nub Ua Ksper Awut, and its 309 or 480 Yitru are leagues in length and 120 in width. It is, in fact, a continuation of the domains of Yasir, Osiris, and in it is the house of Dead, wherein the great entity of the dead himself dwells. The boat of Yafu Ra is preceded by 3 boats. See Volume 1, page 45 through 47. Again, I've already presented this much, and this is what's left. Well, not the index. Of a mystical nature containing hawk entities and a mummified forms of entities who are akin to Yasir. Facing the boats are 4 forms of Yasir with their arms and hands covered. Having arrived at this division, Yafu Ra cries out to its entity, Yasir, who straightway creates these sacred boats and sends them to bring Yafu Ra to the place where he is. The abode of Yasir is situated on the Nut Yasir, i.e. the stream of Osiris. You have 3 Nut, but then you have 3, so N, or perhaps Nu. Nut, Nu Yasir. A name given to this river of the Tuat in the 3rd division out of 12. And it is at the head of this river that the throne of Yasir rests, according to some copies of the Theban recension of the Book of the Dead. The inhabitants who are seen on both banks of the river stream are called Per Teu. Oh, that's written right. Per Teu. And they live on lands which have been allotted to them by Yafu Ra. In return for these, they serve Yasir and defend him from the attacks of all his enemies. As the boat in which Yafu Ra stands and the 3 other boats move on, the entities on the banks move with them and guard them, and when they have escorted the great entity to the end of their territory, they return to their old places and await his coming at the following night. On the following night. On the right of Yafu Ra are 26 entities, and of these 8 are forms of Yasir, 4 of Yasir of the north, and 4 of Yasir of the south. All are under the rule of Ketre, which is the warder of this field. Volume 1, page 60. as I don't remember which chapter. So it's chapter 3 of volume 1. But it is only when they hear the words of Ythura that they come to life. The work which they do in this region is to hew and hack souls in pieces, to imprison the shadows of the dead, and to carry out the sentence of death on those who are doomed to destruction in a place of fire. And they cause fires to come into being and flames to burst forth on the wicked. Now, in this case, also the beings who are doomed to be burned in a place specially set apart for this purpose cannot be of the number of the entities who protect Yasur, for they were created by Ra to serve this entity in this division of the Tuat, and to attend upon himself as he made his journey through it each day. They must, then, be the dead of olden times who have reached this division, but who, through want of friends and relatives upon the earth, make proper and sufficient offerings daily, or through some other cause have failed to find nourishment and have perished. In the consequence, the realm of Yasur had to be cleared of such beings, and the entities whose duty it was to protect him destroyed them with fire. We may note, too, that in this division the shadows and souls of the dead were supposed to wander about, and though we do not know how they arrived there or exactly why they failed to please Yasur, it is quite certain that they were regarded as a danger to the entity and destroyed in consequence. So a lot less secure than other entities that say, oh, obey me, worship me, or go to hell. Yasur was a sort of usurper that wanted to destroy you rather than just punish you, because, you're going to break free or might break free and, oppose him again. Or convince others, don't serve this thing. On the left of Ythura stands a row of entities. See Volume 1, page 50. Some holy in animal forms, who appear to have taken part in the burial ceremonies which were performed for Yasur. The exact functions of many of them are unknown, and the names of certain of them are not found elsewhere. According to the text, these entities are clothed with their own bodies of flesh, and their souls speak from them, and their shadows are joined to them. Having been addressed by Ythura, they sing praises to the entity, and when he is passed from their division, they, as well as the entities on the right of the boat, lift up their voices and weep, in return for the lands which were given them by Yasur, in the possession of which they were confirmed by Ythura. These entities have certain duties to perform, viz. To take vengeance upon the fiend Spe, to make nude come into being, and to cause Hape to flow, the Nile entity. The Nile personified, anyways. From this, it appears that Spe possessed at times power over Nu. That is to say, the great celestial water mass, which was the source of the river Nile in Egypt. To destroy this fiend was all important. For without water, the inhabitants of the Tuat could not live, and the cessation of the flow of the Nile would cause the ruin and death of the people of Egypt. It is interesting to note that the connection of the Nile with the chief domain of Yasur, and it is no doubt a reminiscence of the period in the history of the entity when he was a water entity. Well, whether real or usurping demiurge, the idea are aspects of our psychology, different qualities of things. In the Enochian system, the governing names start in water and end in water. Really 92 of them, 4 in number 30 and 4 in number 22. But the water birth, again, the water birth being raised, your mother teaching you relationship skills, and then the fire birth and the air birth, but that's something I'm going to leave aside for now. A knowledge of the beings in these pictures and of the text of this division was considered of very great importance for the deceased, for knowing their forms and their names. He would not be terrified by their roarings, and would not, in his haste to escape from them, fall headlong into their pits. In this division of the Tuat, we see that Yifu-Ra was absolute master, and that he is made to create its inhabitants to serve Yasir, and Kte Yamete, and himself to allot to them places to dwell in, and food to keep them alive. When he withdraws his light from them, they weep and sink into a state of inertness to await his return on the following day. And the third division of the Tuat is, we find a second part here. Ooh, and there's a picture that I'm going to show you at some point in this. The kingdom of Kte Yamete Yasir, according to the Book of Gates. Before Yifu-Ra can pass into the third division of 12, it is necessary for him to pass through a gate which is protected by 2 strong walls, and a passage running between them. This passage is swept by flames of fire, which proceed from Tuat. Each end of it is guarded by a warder in mummified form, and on the inner side of the inner wall is a company of entities. The gate is called Sipdut Uwa, and the name of its monster serpent is Akbi. And so soon as the boat enters the division of hour 4 of the entities, enters the division of the hour, 4 of the entities of the region appear and take it in tow. The entity is in the same form as before, and has in no way suffered by his passage through the gate, because at the word of Sa, the gate is opened. The flames which swept between the walls ceased, and the warders of the passage and the guardian entities withdrew their opposition. In this division, a serious obstacle had to be overcome. Immediately in the fairway of the course of Yifu-Ra is a group of 8 entities called Fa'eu Natru, who bear on their shoulders a long, pole-like object, each end of which terminates in a bull's head. This object is intended to represent the long tunnel in the earth, each end of which was guarded by a bull, in which, according to one tradition, the night sun passed on its journey from the place of sunset to the place of sunrise. Remember the basic mythic idea. So you have the age of the bull, the age of, and that book was the sacrifice, that was the animal, that was the incarnation, and then the age of Aries, and that was, sacrifice of the ram and the sheep and goat and whatnot, but regular goat. And then you have, well, not really. Well, goat is something on the side, less important. And then you have the Piscean sort of, the human being, fishers of men and all that. But the pole, the mythic entity was often crucified, carrying, pole on its back. Maybe it was, hanging by the pole until it died and all that sort of stuff. But anyways, the night sun, bring me through midnight sun, and a lot of things carried out. And then there ended up being a midnight mass of the Catholic Church, and I'm rambling. At intervals on the tunnel are seated 7 entities called Natru Yimyu, i.e. the entities who are within, and they are intended to represent the guardians of the 7 portions into which the tunnel was divided. The name given to the tunnel is Uyata, i.e. the boat of the earth, but there is no doubt that it originally represented a kind of Tuat, which was complete in itself, as the bull's head, at one at each end of it, proves. Well, that's the secret. Each of the gates, or each of the Tuat, are complete in itself. But you can pass through them in the series, right? Just like each of the centers. Most people never go past the feet of the Kabbalah, and they reach the knees. But you have duties of each kind of reflected in this lower world, and you kind of make your way up. Or some people say, oh, well, we're not quite in the Malkuth. If you're completely secular or an atheist and all that, you're not even in the Malkut. And then the Yesud and the, other levels. But anyways, the difficulty of passing through the boat of the earth is soon overcome, for the entities of the Tuat tow Yefurah through it, and we see them at the other end of the division, still holding the tow line in their hands. In front of them are 4 entities, whose arms and hands are covered. See Volume 2, page 107, whom we have already seen in the book Yim Tuat of Volume 1, page 48, where they were in charge of the 4 boats which filled the pitcher. It is not difficult to explain why the boat of the earth was omitted by the Theban priest from their composition. Had they kept it in, they would have been obliged to make their entity Yefurah, the night form of Yemunrah, to submit to being towed through an inferior Tuat, and to being absorbed by the earth entity. The text which refers to this remarkable scene tells us that Yefurah addresses the 8 entities who support the boat of the earth, and declares that he who is in it is holy. And in reply, the beings Endur Kata say, praise be to the Ba. And you also have the form Ba, Ah, Ah. The mental soul. But i.e., it's the ram-headed form of Osiris, which the entity has taken. You look at the different, Amun's horn, that structure in the brain. You have the different parts, kind of, the brain, how it glumps, and how in some parts it kind of looks like a, the nose, mouth region of the ram, but they had heads cracked open in war and stuff, didn't they? So they would have gotten these ideas without too much, which the entity has taken, which the double bull has swallowed or absorbed. Let the entity be at peace with that which he hath created. The entities also say, praise be Ra, whose Ba hath set himself in order with the earth entity. Thus it is quite clear that the boat of the earth is the abode of the earth entity. To the right of Yefurah, as he passes through this division or hour, are 12 holy entities who are in the Tuat, each in his shrine, with its doors thrown wide open. They are guarded by a huge serpent called Seti. Yeah. These entities are in mummified form and represent a large class of the beatified dead which exist in the realm of Yesir. According to the texts which refer to them, Yefurah find the shrines closed when he appears, and the entities within weeping and lamenting. At his word, the doors fly open, and the occupants of the shrines obtain air and food, and adore him. When he has passed on, the doors of the shrines close again, and the entities betake themselves to lamentations until he reappears on the following night. Another class of the dead owes its revivification, light, and food to the beneficence of Yefurah rather than to Yusir, the living human being that's necessary to manifest the spiritual side of life in these terms. Definitely more important than some usurper, right? But we see the temple gate in Jerusalem that has been sealed over so people can't ride through it anymore or go through it. And the idea that some Messiah is going to come and open the thing, if I had the power, I would open it. But am I saying that I'm the Messiah? No, being the Mahdi or Messiah or Vindix or whatever you're going to call it, you can strive to make yourself ready for that, I guess, but saying I'm going to become it, a little humility. And a little humility, we can accomplish more and be satisfied more with what we have. But a little goes a little beyond the 12 shrines is a group of 12 entities who are partially immersed in the lake of boiling water. In front of each is a large plant. The waters of this lake have the peculiar property of appearing cool to the taste and touch of the entities who live on it, and who feed upon the plants which grow in it. It is important to notice that the lake is said to be boiling hot, and that the birds betake themselves to flight when they see the waters thereof, and when they smell the stench which is in it. Now, this description tells us at once that the lake of boiling water is no other than a collection of water which resembles that of the famous asphaltitis lacus, or asphaltitis limhan, which is described by Diodorus Siculus 248 and 1998. The water of this lake is said to be very salt and of an extremely noxious smell, and the fire which burns beneath the ground and the stench of the bitumen render the inhabitants of the neighboring country sickly and short-lived. The country round about is nevertheless well fitted for the cultivation of palms, wherever it is traversed by fresh water. It is quite clear that the author of the Egyptian text cannot have borrowed his description of the lake from later writers, and it is equally clear that his account of it represents the tradition of the existence of some hot sulfur spring or bituminous lake which exists in Egypt, probably in or near one of the oases, or perhaps in the past. A lot of areas in this world used to be green and stuff like this, and legends of water and area, particularly in mythology, can pass on for thousands or apparently even millions of years, which is kind of interesting. Some of the Hindu myths record things from 1.72 million years ago. I think a couple things from before, and actually get the right period of when these things happen geologically. So it implies either passing on information from earlier types of humans to the modern human, or some sort of spiritual or even extraterrestrial influence that would have known. But anyways, at Karga, for example, there are several springs, the waters of which reach a temperature of 97 degrees Fahrenheit. As we see in the picture, volume 2, page 112, a large plant or small tree growing before each of its inhabitants, it is evident that some kind of vegetation flourished in the neighborhood of the lake, and the quaint costume of the entities, who, of course, typified the inhabitants of the region, suggests that they were not Egyptian. The dwellers in the lake of boiling water entreat Yefurah to come to them, saying, "Send forth thy light upon us, O thou great entity who has fire in thy eyes." Volume 2, page 113. And answer, the entity decrees that their food shall consist of loaves of bread and green herbs, and that their beer shall be made from the kemtet plant. This plant has not as yet been accurately identified, but it is tolerably certain that it belongs to a species which was characteristic of the neighborhood of the lake. Whether an alcoholic beverage or some other intoxicating plant, or whether just, something you prepare and make a beverage, it's neither, but I'm not sure if that can be established. The beings who stand on the left hand of Yafura are divided into two groups. The first consists of 9 men, and the second of 9 entities, and the group is under the command of Tamu. Between Tamu and the first company, who are called Cha-Cha. I'm not sure whether it's TJ or DJ, or whether there's actually a CH sort of sound in there. Volume 2, page 114. Coiled the monster serpent Apep, and I use that as a political symbol, which has collapsed as a result of the utterance of the word of power, but Tamu. And before we go on, we can see, if we look at things as 9 stations, with the bottom 3 being the ones of the failure, or one type of person, another type of person, another type of person. But if we succeed at our mother, our father, and our child stage, or our, consumption, desire, reputation stages, then we move on to the other stages, and maybe there's an entity at each stage that kind of represents that, but there's various things psychologically and spiritually that can be said to that, about that, for another time. The serpent tries to envelop the boat of Yafura with its folds, and then to force a way into his boat, but the Cha-Cha, i.e. great chiefs, cut open its head and slit its body into many pieces, and destruction was filled by Tamu. Oh, now I know which one it is. These Cha-Cha upon the same food as Ra, but they also partake of the offerings made upon earth to Kuntayamante, the ancient entity of the dead of Abydos. The 9 entities who follow these are called Nabu Kurt, and their duty is to repulse the serpents Spie and Yuf, Volume 2, page 115, and to enchant and render helpless and motionless Apep when he attempts to force the gates of Kuntayamante. Their food is the same as that of the Cha-Cha, but they possess a power of a remarkable character, which is represented by the words Mahat Kru, for they know how to utter words in such a way, and with such a tone of voice, that the effect which they wish them to have must of necessity take place. Everything which Yasur possessed as an entity and judge of the dead, he owed to the Ma'at Kru, or the word of Ma'at. As the entity Yafura passes out of the 3rd division, both the Cha-Cha and the Nabu-Kurt give themselves up to lamentation, and they return to the entrance and wait for the reappearance of his boat on the following night, when they will again attack Sbe and Yuf and Hapep and overcome them. The exact place which was set apart for the souls of human beings is nowhere described in the text. And the next will be called chapter 8, 4th division of the Tuat, part 1, the kingdom of Seker according to the book Yim Tuat. And Sharma, peace be upon you.